Huh. Fools. They never prepared for this moment. Not the agencies, not the governments, not the secret councils hidden behind closed doors. They thought their maps of influence stretched endlessly, that borders bent under their signatures, that leaders bowed when they raised a finger. But something shifted, something they can't quantify, something so disruptive that entire blueprints of dominance now look like shredded paper. That something has a name, and that name is yours. They whisper it in parliament halls. They spit it out in military briefings. They scrawl it in classified files, as if writing it down will trap the effect. But it doesn't. Your name leaks. It spreads. It slips into conversations they wish they could control. And each time it's spoken, the ground beneath their authority trembles. Understand this. Power doesn't collapse overnight. It fractures first. It shows cracks that most ignore until the walls cave in. And right now, those cracks are multiplying across capitals, banks, intelligence units, and think tanks. All of them searching for the root cause. All of them tracing threads back to one destabilizing force. You. You didn't ask to be their focus, but your existence itself has become the trigger for instability. You've turned into the kind of figure they can't categorize, the kind they can't dismiss, and the kind they can't control. And that terrifies them more than enemy armies or nuclear weapons. Because at least those they can track. You're not operating by their rules. You want to know why they fear you? Because you've made a single move they couldn't predict, and it sent shockwaves through every model of power they built. Do you realize how dangerous that makes you? Entire global defense systems are founded on prediction. Predict the enemy, control the battlefield. Predict the economy, control the markets. Predict the people, control the narrative. But you broke their predictive loop. You acted outside their radar. You struck without fitting the formula. That's why they're collapsing. Not because they don't have resources, but because their resources were designed to fight something ordinary. And you aren't ordinary. Picture this. Behind locked doors, prime ministers and presidents sit across polished tables. Their aides shuffle classified documents, red marks circling one figure, your influence. They play recordings of your speeches, your moves, your refusals, your rises. They compare notes like panicked students cramming before an exam they know they're going to fail. They try to decode the psychology that drives you. They pay experts to analyze your behavior, running simulations to see what you'll do next. But every simulation breaks. Every theory falls apart. And the more they try to define you, the less they understand. That's not just frustrating for them, it's lethal. Because confusion spreads through their ranks faster than clarity. Your move has shown them a horrifying truth. Power is only strong as long as people believe it's untouchable. And you've touched it. You've dragged their supposed invincibility down into the dirt and showed the world that emperors bleed, kings stutter, and giants trip. You've revealed the fragility behind their armored fronts. And the irony? You didn't even need to burn a city to the ground. You didn't need armies or missiles. You just needed precision. A move so sharp, so unexpected, that the ripple effect traveled across oceans and into war rooms. That's what collapses empires. The small, undetectable strikes that crack foundations until skyscrapers tumble. Now watch what happens when fear spreads upward instead of downward. Usually governments plant fear into citizens. They broadcast warnings, orchestrate threats, show power to keep the masses docile. But now, the fear is circling back. The leaders themselves are the ones whispering in fear of you. They try to keep it off camera, but you can hear it in their rushed statements, in their nervous eyes, in the subtle changes of language. Fear in power doesn't stay hidden. It bleeds into decision-making. It fractures alliances. It breeds mistakes. And you forced that infection to spread globally. That's not just disruption. That's domination at a psychological level they never prepared for. But let's not pretend this is just about politics. It's bigger. Corporations are panicking too. Billion-dollar companies that thrive on stability are watching markets shake because of your impact. Their economists can't explain the sudden shifts. Their boards demand answers. They search for scapegoats. But every arrow points back to the same unshakable origin: you. Imagine CEOs waking up at 3 a.m., drenched in sweat, realizing that their influence doesn't stretch as far as your ripple. They can't brand against you. They can't market their way around you. They can't pay lobbyists enough to contain you. Because what you've created isn't a brand. It's a phenomenon. And phenomena can't be purchased. They spread without permission. And yet, the real collapse is happening where no one can see. Inside their strategies, power thrives on the illusion of control. Remove that, and it crumbles. You've shattered that illusion. Governments are now second-guessing themselves. Intelligence agencies rewrite reports 3 times because nothing feels certain anymore. Allies stop trusting each other because no one knows who truly understands you. Leaders who once walked with unshakable confidence now hesitate before speaking. Do you know how catastrophic hesitation is for the powerful? A single second of doubt in decision-making can end alliances, topple regimes, bankrupt corporations. And you've multiplied that hesitation into every layer of their influence. This is what terrifies them most. You didn't climb their ranks to overthrow them. You didn't infiltrate their towers to dismantle them from the inside. You simply operated in plain sight with a level of authenticity they can't match. And that alone destabilizes them. Because power built on lies collapses when confronted with someone who doesn't play the lie. That's you. That's why the collapse feels like an avalanche. But here's the cruel part for them. Collapse doesn't announce itself. It starts quietly, like a whisper ignored. One alliance cracks, one economy dips, one official slips up. And before anyone realizes it, the structure caves in. That's the stage they're in now. The warning signals are everywhere. Elections swinging in directions no poll predicted. Leaders resigning for health reasons. Stock markets trembling without clear cause. Secret meetings leaking into public ears. It's not coincidence, it's consequence. The consequence of underestimating what one person's move can trigger. And the file on their desks with your name on it proves it. Do you think they'll admit it publicly? Never. No government will confess that one individual shattered their confidence. No agency will announce that their strategies crumbled because they couldn't predict you. Instead, they'll mask it. They'll blame economics. They'll blame enemies. They'll even blame unforeseen circumstances. But behind the closed doors, in the recordings never released, in the briefings never televised, your name is the first word spoken, and it carries more weight than entire nations. Your rise has exposed the one truth they've always feared, that real influence doesn't come from titles, armies, or banks. It comes from unpredictability, weaponized with precision. And that's what you embody. You've weaponized unpredictability. That's why intelligence agencies dedicate whole teams just to monitor you. That's why world leaders shift agendas based on your presence. That's why corporations rewrite strategies when you appear in their orbit. You've turned yourself into the one variable they can't neutralize. And variables like that collapse equations. So ask yourself, how does it feel knowing your very existence is rewriting the rules of global power? How does it feel knowing your moves trigger chain reactions they can't reverse? You're not just a figure in their files. You're the reason their hands shake when signing documents. You're the reason advisors stumble through explanations. You're the reason certainty is a word erased from their vocabulary. And once certainty dies, collapse is inevitable. But this is only the first ripple. You've seen what happens when a single move shatters confidence. Now imagine what happens when you make the next move. Because collapse doesn't pause. Collapse accelerates. And acceleration doesn't wait for permission. The moment one structure tilts, the others scramble to compensate. But in their scrambling, they reveal what they've always tried to hide. Desperation. And desperation isn't strength. It's weakness dressed in the costume of urgency. Watch them closely now. Presidents rushing into sudden summits. Generals holding back-to-back emergency calls. CEOs deploying damage control strategies overnight. They pretend it's business as usual, but you can smell the panic underneath. They're not moving with confidence. They're reacting to you. Every headline, every decree, every sudden pivot is a mirror reflecting the move you made. And that's how you know you're not just part of the game anymore. You've become the board itself. Acceleration means the cracks multiply faster than they can repair them. A government falls in one region, and the tremors ripple into another. Economies wobble in sync. Alliances weaken. Treaties falter. What looked like coincidence becomes undeniable pattern. And in every confidential analysis, they write the same haunting sentence. The destabilizing variable is tied to a single name. That sentence isn't speculation, it's confession. They know the truth. They just don't want the public to know it yet. But leaks happen. They always do. The people will see the pattern soon enough. And when they do, your story won't just be whispered, it'll be broadcast as legend. Understand the psychology of this stage. Those in power are addicted to control. Take control from them, and they don't just lose their grip, they lose their sanity. You've taken their predictions, their equations, their polished blueprints, and you've set them on fire. They can't control you. They can't anticipate you. They can't define you. And when control slips, fear fills the vacuum. They are no longer leaders. They are reactors. That's the shift you've engineered. You didn't just make a move. You altered their posture, and posture determines survival. Think of the image inside those war rooms right now. Screens glowing with data, advisors barking updates, military commanders whispering about scenarios they once laughed off. And at the center of those screens, a pattern emerges again and again. Your name connected to disruption. They track your movements, analyze your contacts, measure your influence. But the more they track, the more their models break. They chase you with algorithms, but you move like a force they can't digitize. You've become the chaos code in their ordered machine, the single element that shatters calculation. And their frustration grows with every failed attempt to contain you. This is why governments are watching every detail of your life now. Not because they want to celebrate you, but because they fear the next ripple you'll cause. They've got satellites trained, analysts typing reports, psychologists drafting profiles, security councils raising red flags. But deep down, they already know there is no containment strategy for you. Their eyes may watch, but their hands remain powerless. Surveillance without control is nothing but obsession. And obsession eats institutions alive from the inside. You've become the new obsession of global power. Think about that. Entire intelligence agencies, funded with billions, once dedicated to counterterrorism, espionage, and rival states, now allocating resources to decode you. Your name is discussed in the same breath as wars, economic collapses, and political revolutions. You are now their reference point, their anchor, their excuse, and soon their downfall. Because when the guardians of order turn their gaze on one person, they admit the order is weaker than it seems. And you feel it, don't you? The shift in energy when you enter a space. People sense it without understanding why. The unease, the curiosity, the electric silence that follows you. That same energy is magnified at the global scale. When your move sent shockwaves, it wasn't just a tremor. It was a test of resilience, and they failed. Because instead of absorbing the shock, they shattered under it. The cracks are permanent now. Collapse doesn't reverse, it compounds. Do you understand what this means? You are not fighting them. You are not wrestling with governments, companies, or agencies. You are watching them wrestle with themselves because of you. And in their panic, they expose their weaknesses one by one. Nations that appeared united suddenly fracture internally. Corporations that seemed invincible suddenly fire executives. Military leaders suddenly resign. These aren't random events. They're the visible scars of your invisible strike. You've turned their entire infrastructure into a domino set. One push from you, and the rest fall by themselves. Let's go deeper. Collapse isn't just about headlines. It's about the psyche of leadership. Imagine a prime minister lying awake at night, replaying your name in their mind like a curse they can't shake. Imagine a billionaire CEO gripping their glass of whiskey tighter, wondering how someone without $1 trillion empire managed to shift the ground beneath them. Imagine generals whispering to each other in coded language, afraid to admit that all their war games failed to anticipate you. This isn't theory. This is happening right now. The most powerful people on Earth are haunted not by nations, not by armies, not by markets, but by the ripple of a single name. You've created something larger than rebellion. You've sparked contagion, a psychological contagion that spreads from one leader to the next. Doubt spreads, hesitation spreads, fear spreads. And when leaders doubt, their followers sense it. When followers sense it, unity fractures. And when unity fractures, collapse accelerates. You don't need to destroy them with weapons. You just need to let them destroy themselves under the weight of fear. That's the beauty of what you've unleashed. But remember, acceleration isn't neutral. It amplifies both collapse and exposure. The more they collapse, the more people start asking, why? And every investigation circles back to you. They won't say it openly, but leaks, rumors, and whispers are already spreading. Journalists chase shadows of your story. Dissidents name-drop you in underground meetings. Citizens share your impact in encrypted chats. And slowly, the mythos grows. You're no longer a person. They're turning you into an explanation, a symbol. A figure whose influence explains what logic cannot. And once you become the explanation, you can't be erased. That's why governments hate you but can't silence you. That's why agencies watch you but can't stop you. That's why corporations try to bury you but end up fueling your fire. Because in every attempt to contain you, they reinforce your influence. Every surveillance report that mentions your name adds another layer of fear. Every policy drafted in response to you proves your reach. Every collapse pinned on you turns you into the ghost haunting their legacy. You've transcended confrontation. You've become inevitability in motion. Think of the irony. The world's most powerful once believed history was theirs to write. Yet now, your presence edits their chapters. They wanted to decide the story of nations, but your move rewrote the plot. They wanted to declare who rises and who falls. But your existence declared otherwise. They wanted to own the narrative, but you've hijacked it completely. And now, they're characters in your story, not the other way around. And while they scramble to hold their collapsing empires together, you stand untouched. Because your power isn't rooted in titles, offices, or assets. It's rooted in unpredictability, sharpened into precision. That's the weapon no army can match. You can't bomb it. You can't sanction it. You can't bribe it. You can only bow before it. And the longer they resist that truth, the faster their collapse unfolds. So now comes the question, what happens next? Collapse doesn't stop at politics. It seeps into culture, science, technology, and belief. Already you see the ripple. Scientists questioning their foundations, scholars rewriting frameworks, thinkers abandoning old models. Why? Because if governments and corporations can collapse from one unexpected move, then no institution is sacred anymore. You've set off a chain reaction of doubt, and doubt is the poison of dogma. You've infected every sector with it, and the infection can't be cured, it can only spread. This is your legacy in motion, global powers collapsing not from external invasion, but from internal implosion, triggered by the undeniable fact of your existence. Your name has become the trigger phrase for panic, the cipher for disruption, the unseen hand rearranging order. And now, as acceleration takes over, you don't even have to move. The wave you already created is enough to dismantle them. But here's the secret. When the wave reaches its peak, you'll strike again. Not because you must, but because the collapse demands it. And that strike will be the nail in the coffin for powers that once thought themselves eternal. They're not watching to stop you anymore. They're watching to brace for impact. And the impact hasn't even peaked yet. The first tremor was enough to make them stumble, but the aftershocks are only beginning to spread. Every calculation they made assumed stability. Every projection assumed continuity. But you've reduced those assumptions to dust. You've made the rulers of nations feel the one thing they were never supposed to feel: powerless. That's the real collapse, not just the shattering of governments, but the erosion of their belief that they were untouchable. Once that belief dies, everything else follows. Look at the faces of leaders when they speak now. They don't carry the confidence they once did. Their voices tremble. Their rhetoric repeats itself like broken machinery. Their eyes dart as if hunted by invisible predators. That predator is your influence. You are the shadow in their council chambers, the ghost at their negotiation tables, the unspoken weight pressing against their minds. They might smile for the cameras, but behind the rehearsed composure, they are thinking of you. Your name lives rent-free in their strategies, their nightmares, their hesitation, and hesitation at that level is fatal. This is where shockwaves evolve into seismic shifts. One shockwave disrupts. A series of shockwaves rewrites history. You didn't just send ripples across ponds. You sent quakes through continents. You've exposed how fragile the so-called giants really are. Nations that boasted centuries of stability are now plagued by internal fractures. Economies once worshipped as unstoppable engines now bleed through cracks. Alliances once sworn eternal now break under pressure. And every collapse, every fracture, every betrayal can be traced back to the echo of your move. You are no longer a player in their game. You are the earthquake that swallowed the board. And don't underestimate how much this terrifies them. Power relies on illusion. Illusion of strength, illusion of unity, illusion of control. You stripped away the illusion and left them exposed. You revealed the weak foundation beneath the polished surface. Now, governments that once claimed to be guardians of order are nothing more than trembling architects watching their own towers crumble. Corporations that once claimed to be too big to fail are now confessing losses in private rooms. Military leaders that once boasted of dominance now whisper doubts to each other in language coded by fear. And through all of it, your name is the constant, the thread that ties every failure together. But here's what they don't understand. Collapse doesn't just destroy, it redistributes. Power doesn't vanish, it moves. And it's moving in your direction. That's why they can't stop watching you. Every government on Earth has you on their screens, their documents, their agendas. Because deep down, they know what's happening. Their power is bleeding out, and it's flowing into you. You've become the gravitational center, pulling authority away from its old thrones. You don't need to seize it. It's being handed to you by their own implosion. And that's the cruelest irony of all. They're feeding the rise of the very force that's dismantling them. You've reached a point where surveillance has replaced sovereignty. Think about that. Nations aren't planning futures anymore. They're planning how to monitor you. Agencies aren't drafting new blueprints for stability. They're drafting new reports on your influence. Corporations aren't investing in innovation. They're investing in countermeasures against you. And yet, all their focus only makes your reach stronger. Because every time they acknowledge you, even in secret, they admit their dependency on you. They admit their fear. They admit their irrelevance. And irrelevance is the final nail in the coffin of power. The truth is simple. You've become the silent headline beneath every headline. When they announce economic downturns, your name lingers in the subtext. When they announce political scandals, your shadow hovers in the background. When they announce sudden resignations, your influence is the whisper in every ear. The public may not always see it directly, but behind the veil, insiders know. They know the chain of cause and effect. They know why their empires tremble. They know who triggered the shockwaves. They know whose name carries the gravity that bends their trajectories. And soon, the public will know too. Because no collapse stays hidden forever. Leaks will multiply, whistleblowers will speak, journalists will connect dots. And when the truth surfaces, it won't come as a surprise. It will come as confirmation of what people already feel. They feel the instability, they sense the shifts, they taste the fear in the air. And when they discover the reason, when they discover that one move, one person, one name, shook the pillars of global power, the mythos will be unstoppable. You won't just be part of history, you will be the dividing line that split history into before and after. Do you understand how heavy that is? Empires are crumbling not because of armies, not because of revolutions, but because of you. Every government is watching because they can't afford not to. You are the risk assessment they can't calculate, the disaster scenario they can't simulate, the chain reaction they can't contain. And every second they spend watching, they prove the point. The world is no longer orbiting around them, it's orbiting around you. The shockwaves you sent didn't just disrupt governments, they rewired psychology. Citizens don't look at leaders the same way anymore. Investors don't look at markets the same way anymore. Soldiers don't look at commands the same way anymore. Everyone senses the tremor. Everyone senses the fragility. And fragility, once exposed, spreads like wildfire. That's the true contagion you've unleashed. Not rebellion, not war, but awareness. Awareness that the powerful can fall. Awareness that the untouchable can be touched. Awareness that one move from the right figure can unravel the entire order of things. And once awareness spreads, it can't be caged again. This is why governments tremble. This is why agencies obsess. This is why corporations panic. Not because they think you'll make another move, they know you will. But because they know they won't survive it. They are bracing for impact. But impact is inevitable. And inevitability doesn't forgive the unprepared. They are standing on cracking ice, praying it doesn't break, while you are the weight that ensures it will. And when it does, the plunge will be catastrophic. Picture the near future. World leaders meeting in emergency conferences that end without resolution. Markets swinging like pendulums, unable to stabilize. Citizens flooding streets demanding answers. Corporations cutting losses in waves. And through it all, a single unspoken understanding spreading through every corridor of power. This collapse is tied to a name. That name isn't written in textbooks yet, but it's carved into their private files, their coded documents, their encrypted communications. You are the ghost that moves through their systems, the fire that burns their illusions, the quake that swallows their certainty. And what happens after collapse? That's the question they dread. Because collapse clears the board. Collapse erases the illusion of permanence. Collapse hands the pen of history to whoever stands unbroken when the dust settles. And right now, every sign points to you. You are unbroken, you are untouched. You are the constant while their empires crack. And that means the pen of history is already in your hand. Whether they admit it or not, you're writing the next chapter. And they are just background noise in the margins. So let them watch. Let them obsess. Let them waste sleepless nights analyzing your every move. Because in their obsession, they are accelerating their own downfall. The more they watch, the more they fear. The more they fear, the more they fracture. And the more they fracture, the more they collapse. This is the spiral they can't escape. A spiral you triggered. A spiral that only tightens as time moves forward. And when it finally snaps, when the spiral turns into freefall, they'll look back and realize the truth. The collapse didn't happen to them. It happened because of you. That is the legacy you've already secured. A world that once bowed to governments, corporations, and institutions, now shifting its gaze to a single figure. A world where power no longer means titles, armies, or banks, but the ability to send shockwaves with a single unexpected move. You've proven that true power isn't control. It's unpredictability wielded with precision. And you wield it flawlessly. That's why they're collapsing. That's why every government is watching. That's why your name is etched into the DNA of this new era. Because collapse isn't a tragedy. It's a transfer. And the transfer is complete. They don't own power anymore. You do. and the world will never be the same.